clearly into the microphone. Mr Rogers, do you wish to make an opening statement?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Rhiannon.
Thank you. Thank you for waiting for this late hour. Is the AEC confident in the integrity of the latest round of CFMEU elections?
Conduct or the outcome? Sorry, Senator.
Senator, I'm sorry, you might have to, Tom Rogers, the Electoral Commission, you might have to provide me a little more detail so I can provide you with a...
Well, it's just I understand that the AEC runs the CFMEU elections.
Senator, we run a whole range of... Last year I think we ran something like 1,600 either protected action ballots or fee-for-service elections. And if we have run the election, I'm very confident in the processes that we put in place to actually run the mechanics of the election. But as you know, there are a whole range of issues around elections that are not the purview of the AEC, industrial elections, I should say, that are not the purview of the AECs.
Minister Cash has claimed that the CFMEU had done a deal to hand senior leadership positions to Mrs Park and Greenfield. Do you have any evidence that would point to a deal, considering you ran the election?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question correctly, Senator Rand.
Sorry, you didn't hear the question?
I didn't quite catch the question correctly.
So I'll start again. Minister Cash has claimed that the CFMEU had done, and I'm quoting from Minister Cash, a deal to hand senior leadership positions to Mr Parker and Greenfield.
Thank you.
So my question is, does the AEC have any evidence that would point to a deal, considering you ran the election?
I have no evidence before me, Senator, and if you're talking about an issue that may have occurred outside of the election itself, but rather in terms of the preparation for an election by a particular group within a union, I have no evidence before me of that.
To be Senator, if I might assist, the AEC is the ballot agent for the election of certain office bearers for unions under the Fair Work Registered Organisations Act. And yes, we do conduct those elections where we have been nominated as the ballot agent by the Fair Work Commission. In relation to the CFMEU, I am aware there was an election over in Western Australia. The issue over there became the eligibility of particular candidates to be nominated. The Fair Work Commission recently issued some guidelines in relation to that, because under the Fair Work Registered Organisations Act there are certain persons who cannot be office bearers and eligible to stand for an election. But otherwise, if the AEC becomes aware of an irregularity in the conduct of one of those elections, we are required under section 190, I believe it is, of the Fair Work Registered Organisations Act to go to the Federal Court to seek orders in relation to that. But I'm not aware of any specific irregularity that's occurred in relation to an election that we've done under the Fair Work Registered Organisations Act, but we will take that on notice.
And Senator, if you have any evidence you'd like us to look at, I'm more than prepared to look at that as well.
Yes.
Can I add, Senator Rhiannon, I think to be fair, the Commission's outlined their role in the electoral process for a registered organisation. And I think to be fair to the quote from Senator Cash, I'm not aware of the full context of the quote, but that quote that you read out or you referred to, I don't think that necessarily limits only to the fairness of the electoral process. I think that
well, with all due
alludes
respect, Minister, a deal to hand senior leadership positions to Mrs Parker and Greenfield is really virtually negating that there's been a fair election. But anyway, at the lateness of the hour...
It could be a deal about tickets formed, support for, fundraising for, slush funds used for elections.
You obviously haven't listened to the response from the AEC, but at the lateness of the hour, I did want to get onto some of the issues about the definition. So I do want to go back to this issue. Is there a distinction between donations or gift and other receipts in the actual legislation?
Senator, we've been over this before. The actual legislation, the definition is in section 287 of the Commonwealth Electoral Act, and the definition in the Act is gift. What we have done to assist in relation to people going through the returns that are put on our website is to assist. We have donations and we have other services. So the Act itself, the only definition is the definition of gift, and that is what is required to be disclosed in parts of the Act. In relation to the annual returns for political parties, etc., they have to disclose all money that they receive, all debts that they incur, all expenditure that is incurred as well. And to assist people in going through those returns, we have on the form something that says donations and something that says other. And it's to try and assist, for example, one of the things you quite often see that in an election year you'll get the payment of election funding by the AEC, and so that doesn't look as though the Commonwealth is making a donation or the AEC is making a donation to the political party. That's always included as other, as opposed to being a donation. So my conclusion then is that the parties are not legally obliged, or people who fill in the returns, are not legally obliged to make the distinction on their disclosure form. But the parties most of the parties see it in their interest to have that distinction on the return, so there are things that aren't regarded as a donation, but they still have to include it because it's money that they have received. Are you aware that there are more monies that many would determine as donations are being put down as other receipts? Senator, when these are issues, and we are aware that a couple have been raised with us, we will approach the relevant political party and seek their views, and we may come to a normally an agreed conclusion that an amendment may be appropriate to have that published.
But I might just say, Senator, again, if you have some specific cases you'd like us to look at, and we'd be more than prepared to do that. Okay, no, that's very good. But given the lack of distinction, is it fair to say that we do not have transparency of donations, but only transparency of payments? Because the transparency of donations is not complete. I think, to be fair, you're asking me to make a judgment call on that.
I was going to say, Senator Brown, I think Mr Pirani outlined that all receipts are considered, and within those, all donations would be included. So I think the construction you've put on that, I actually can't think of a donation that is not included in the return, as Mr Pirani outlined it.
But some money received as a donation by a political party could be disclosed as an other receipt or even left blank. Because I think we've all seen some disclosure returns where it's just blank, it's got the money, but that part's not filled in.
But it's disclosed as a gift, isn't it, Mr.
Senator, look, I'll give you the classic example that we have is when a person attends a dinner where members of a political party or government may be present, but quite often we'll have that the person who attended might regard it as a donation, while the recipient might regard it as another. And it's one of the areas where the Act is not clear, and it's been a long-standing issue. Again, it's something that we attempt to address in the various guidelines that we publish on our website, but it is an issue that's there, and it's one of the reasons why it is impossible to accurately say and match a particular donation with a particular receipt, because quite often there is not a meeting of minds between the person who is making the payment and the recipient of the payment. So considering we're basically addressing transparency here and the public's right to know, is it fair to say that a member of the public who looks at the AEC site and looks under the donation category, the figures that they see would be an underestimation, as some donations could have been listed as other receipts or left blank? So that's why I go back to my point, that we don't have transparency of donations. It's not the full details. We have transparency of payments.
You have transparency of gifts as defined by the Act, don't you?
No, because not all of them are defined. They don't have to call it a gift. They can call it another receipt. But Senator, again, you're only talking about amounts here that are above the disclosure threshold. Yes.
If it's below the disclosure threshold, it won't be separately reported at all.
Yes, no,
It'll
I'm not
just be
I'm talking
included in the
about above
total amount.
1,300.
Well, part of the issue is how much of the money that's received will be below the disclosure threshold, because you won't see that anyway, because it won't be separately reported. It'll only be those larger amounts that are above the disclosure threshold that are required to be disclosed separately from the bulk amount that is actually received by the political party. So it is an issue, it is in the Act, and all we can say is it's there.
Okay, to move on to loans, if the AEC became aware from viewing disclosure returns from a donor and the party that received the donation of a discrepancy about loan arrangements, would that trigger further inquiries by the AEC?
In a general sense, yes.
But again, I'm very conscious that you're asking a question there that is requiring some speculation, but if you've got a specific example, we'd be happy to take that, Senator, and look at the detail of it.
So the disclosure returns lodged with the AEC show the family first received a $1.47 million loan from Mr Bob Day and his companies. The family first disclosure returns show only $1.19 million in outgoing payments on this loan. Is that the sort of discrepancy that you will investigate?
Senator, that specific matter that you refer to is active at the moment, and we have done some work in that space, and I would expect that there will be an amended return published on our website fairly shortly for that, for the issue that you raised there.
So just in terms of how you manage this, will you determine if the requirements under section 306A brackets 3 of the Act with regard to loans to political parties that require terms and conditions of the loan, and you set out in your own documents amount of loan, interest payable on the loan, repayment schedule, any special conditions attached to the loan, were documented and retained by Family First?
As I mentioned, Senator, that matter is active at the moment, and I'm loath to talk about an active matter, but we are working on that issue at the moment.
Do you also investigate if loans were provided at the market rate?
I'm not sure that would play into our space, Senator. I can't see that that would be part of our investigation. I might have to take that on notice and think about that a little more. But
why I was asking is because if they were provided, if the loan was provided at a concessional rate, would the difference accounted for as a gift in kind and disclosed appropriately? Wouldn't you have to assess that if that happened?
I think I'd like to consider my answer for that one, Senator, and I'll take that on notice.
Okay, I'll pass over to my colleagues and I'll come back. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.